DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo.
And then can you briefly tell the court what was your role and the purpose of that?
One of the, SANDF members was stationed at a separate point than his girlfriend, and he went there and he shot her several times, after which he proceeded to shoot himself.
Okwenzeka ke lana ukuthi ke omunye ke kumasosha ke la bizwa ke ukuthi iSANDF wayesebenza ke kwenye indawo bese ukuthi ke athandana naye ke yena ke kwenye indawo wase ehamba ke eya la asebenzela khona ke usisi lona ke la amdubula khona ke amahlandla amaningi ke waseqhubeka ke naye eyidubula. Yes,
he did not die, my lord, and he was charged with the murder of his girlfriend.
Ngeshwa ke azange ashoneke noma ngenkathi ke noma ngeshwa azange ashoneke wase yena ke esetheswa icala ke manje lokuthi ke wabulala ke usisi abethandana naye.
Some of the exhibits were brought to South Africa for example the firearm and cartridge cases for examination.
Futhi ke amazibithi ke alethwa la eNingizimu Afrika ke ukuthi ke ahlolwe ke isibhamu kanye futhi ke nawo amagobolondo.
After which I was requested to do a crime scene reconstruction in the DRC.
Ila engaqala khona ukuthi ngiyosebenza ke kuyona ke indawo leyo yesigameko khona eDRC.
Thank you. On paragraph 2.1.2, also indicated that you obtained an advanced certificate in forensic criminalistics, specialized in forensic ballistic. Do you remember the duration of the course?
It was a 2-year certificate, my lord.
Okay. 2 years certificate. Lana nguzwa khona ke ukuthi ke eUNISA ke kwaba isikhathi esingakanani ngo2001 kwakuyi certificate engasenza ke iminyaka emibili.
You also mentioned that your office is equipped with a microscope. Do you know if other offices of other analysts or examiners are also equipped with microscopes?
Some of the offices, my lord, do not have microscopes in their offices. There is a central point where a microscope will then be shared.
Ushilo ke ukuthi ke kwelapho ihhovisi unayo ke imicroscope ngabe uyazini ukuthi ke abanye oza kwenu banawo yini kuma office abo abanye ke abanayo ke kukhona ke indawo la ukuhlangana khona ke noma ke exercise eyodwa.
In paragraph 3 you mentioned the period in which you were asked for an opinion. So my question is, did you know at the time when you gave this opinion that that opinion relates or pertains to this specific case?
After I gave the opinion to Colonel Mangena, I asked him regarding which case this was, and he informed me that it is the Senzo Mayiwa case.
Lana ke ku paragraph 3 ke uyasho ke noma uyasisho isikhathi owacelwa ngaso ke uyena ke uKenel Mangena ecela uvo kuwena. Ingabe ngaleso sikhathi yini wawazi yini ukuthi lolo vo unikeza ngalo mayelana neliphi icala kamuva kokuthi ke sengwenzile ke umsebenzi ke ngase ngimbuza ke uKenel Mangena ukuthi kumayelana neliphi icala wangitshela ke ukuthi icala lika Senzo Mayiwa.
If the defense counsels on behalf of accused 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were to ask you if this was a borderline case, what will be your comment?
It is not a borderline case, my lord. I am sufficient. There is sufficient agreement of individual characteristics for me to be able to say that this is indeed.
Necessary for the state to ask if counsel for accused number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were to ask you if this is a borderline, what your comment would be, than for the state to ask him, hey, if this was in fact a borderline case.
Yeah, what do you want me to say?
I'm asking from the understanding of the court whether that is an appropriate question or not.
I think it's appropriate because...
No, it's not appropriate.
Now, why do you ask me?
Because I want the court to redirect the state that you shouldn't really ask that question in that fashion. You should rather say, in your opinion, was this a borderline case or not?
How do you ask a judge an opinion? When the judge responds, then you say, no, I don't want you to say that. You must answer it this way.
I'm saying, my lord, mero motu, the court must then direct that question should be disallowed.
I'm not disallowing it because I tried to explain to you that is the defense which is proffered by all the accused that this was a borderline case. Not me saying that. It's the
That is
accused.
so, my lord, but the state in the conduct of its case should then be asking this witness, because the minute he assumes that it is us that are going to say it's a borderline case, naturally this witness is going to say no, it's not a borderline case because he's not here for the defense. He's here on account of the state. Why can't the state then put a neutral assertion to her and say, in your view, after having determined this, after having done this analysis, do you find that this was a borderline case or not? Why does he have to mention us in his own
Well,
case?
they're within the law, and I'll tell you, I'll quote you just one big case, the South African Rugby Union case, where
Yes, my lord.
the old president gave a view when he was against Louis Late.
Yes.
The law says you must state the defense case to the witnesses of the state. That's what the law says.
But my
You
lord,
must put the defense case to the witnesses so that they can respond. So I don't see anything wrong with this question of saying they are saying it's a borderline case. The defense is saying that. What is your view? And this witness is supposed to be here as an expert. Now I'm told that he's a witness of the state. I thought you were here as an expert. Okay.
she is here, my lord, on account of the state.
As an expert.
Yes,
That's it.
that is the expectation. But whether or not she's here as an expert is supposed to be, it's another thing. But for the state to say, the defense says that this is a borderline case, what is your view? Obviously, the mind of this witness then gets stated. Why can't she be simply asked, was this in your view a borderline case or not?
I've allowed that question, sir.
Thank you, my lord.
Okay, so
Ma'am, can you proceed to answer the question?
In my opinion, it is not a borderline case as there is sufficient agreement of individual characteristics.
Ingabe ngokwakho-ke noma ngolwakho uvo-ke icala lelo ongathi-ke icala-ke elisasegcineni noma eseqophelweni-ke eliphezulu-ke cha ngokwami-ke kwangasilona-ke ngoba-ke lana kwakukhona-ke okwanele futhi-ke okwanginelisayo-ke nami-ke ukuthi kutholakala ngakho uhlangothi futhi nangalabo kuyatholakala futhi.
I have no further questions, my lord, for this witness.
Thank you, my lord. I've got a few questions for you, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ma'am, you talked about verification and giving of opinion by other analysts. Have you verified the work of Lieutenant Colonel Mangena before? Before the 22nd of July 2020,
Relating to any case or a specific case.
on other cases?
I have, my lord.
Ingabe ngaphambilini-ke kwaleli langa leli langa 22 July 2020 owacelwa ngalo Colonel Mangena ukuthi-ke ubheke lona-ke umsebenzi awenza khona-ke la ake acela khona yebo akhona amanye amacala akhe-ke ake angicela kuwona.
Have you ever gave opinion on the findings of Lieutenant Colonel Mangena before 22 July 2020?
I have, my lord.
Yebo ngaphambili kwazo i-22 July 2020 senganikeza ngalo uvo kumanye amacala akhe uKolonel Mangena.
And same thing has happened after the 22nd of July 2020. Has that ever happened after the 22nd of July 2020?
It has, my lord.
Futhi yebo nasemuva kwazo noma ngale kwazo i-22 July 2020.
And you gave evidence that you did not record your opinion on the day after you underwent the microscopic analysis.
That's correct, my lord.
Futhi-ke wethule nobufakazi-ke ukuthi-ke lokho-ke owakuthola-ke awubhalanga phansi yebo kuyiqiniso.
All right. Have you ever, it could be verification of his work or giving of your opinion, have you ever differed with Lieutenant Colonel Mangena? Especially when you are giving opinion, have you ever, before this 22nd of July 2020 or after the 22nd of July 2020?
I can't recall whether I've agreed with him or disagreed with him specifically, but the possibility does exist.
Sekuke kwenzeka yini ke ukuthi ngaphambi kwazo i22 July 2020 noma emuva kwazo i22 zika July 2020 uma ucelwa ke uyena uKenneth Mangena uthi ke unikeze ngovo ukuthi ke usho uvo oluhlukileke kuyena angeke ngisho ke noma ngisakhumbulile ke ukuthi kusuka kwenzeka ke lokuthi ngivume ngiphikisane naye ke kodwa lokho kungenzeka.
But I know you can't recall, but you can recall something that happened 22 July 2020. This is just a fair question. Have you ever gave a different opinion on the works or on the findings of Lieutenant Colonel Mangena? Yes or no?
I can't recall, my lord.
Angikhumbula ukuthi sekwenzeka ukuthi yini nginikeze ngovo oluhlukile ku Lieutenant Colonel Mangena.
Thank you. No further questions.
As the court pleases, my lord. Morning, ma'am.
Morning, sir.
Sorry. Morning, Captain.
Morning.
Captain, let's start briefly with a summation of your curriculum vitae. You stated that you did an internal training course and an external training course in ballistics, correct?
The ballistic training was internal, my lord. The external training was presented by UNISA, yes. So
Yebo ke lokhu i-training ephathelene nama ballistics yona ke ngenzeka ngaphakathi ke esiphoyiseni bese kuthi ke leya ngaphandle ke yenziwa i-UNISA.
And you've never attended any courses that were conducted by the FBI that your peers, Lieutenant Colonel Sereo and Lieutenant Colonel Mangena, attended?
no, my lord, I did not attend the FBI course.
I-course yona ke i-FBI lo ashoyo ke kumele ukuthi uKenneth Mangena kanye noKenneth Sereo baya kuyona mina ke angazi ngiyona.
Now you join the Forensic Sciences Laboratory ballistic section in 2000, the year 2000, and then at paragraph 2.4, you state that you were declared competent and proficient in forensic ballistics examination. After how long since you joined were you declared competent and proficient?
If my recollection is correct, I was declared proficient on the 1st of April 2004. 2004.
You said the date?
The 1st of April 2004. But that is, if I'm correct.
Uma ke ngingenzi iphutha ke kwakungeyi1 zika April 2004 uma sebeshoko ukuthi manje sengikulungileke ukuthi ke umsebenzi lona ke noma ke ukuhlolwa ke kwawo ke umsebenzi lo uphathelene nebhamu nenhlamvu ngingawenza. Nanjengoba mina ngaqala ke ngo2000 ukusebenza ke kuona ama ballistic.
Now your testimony is that you are approached by Lieutenant Colonel Mangena to do microscopic comparison on his findings, correct?
It's an opinion. I was asked for an opinion on
Yes,
microscopic.
an opinion.
That's correct, my lord.
Kuyiqiniso ukuthi ngazi 22 July 2020 ingathi ke engangicela uyena uLieutenant Colonel Mangena engicela uvo.
Now, just briefly, between the 22nd of July 2020 to date, how many examinations and comparisons have you conducted?
My lord, I cannot recall. I will have to go back to the system. I have also been appointed as acting group leader where I oversee members and I review. So don't do as many cases specifically for a certain period of time.
Uma ungasho ke ukuthi ke ukusuka ke ngaso ke lesikhathi ke kuze kube manje ukuthi semangaki ke amaqala osiwenzileke ungafanele ngibuyele emuva ke ngiyokubheka ke lokho futhi ke isikhathi kuba nesikhathi ke la engenzi umsebenzi omningi ngoba ke kunesikhathi la khona ke engaqokwa ke ukuthi ke ayibe mina ke ohola ithimba ke ukubheka umsebenzi woza kwethu.
But I can get the record for the court if needed.
Yes, but the point is it 10, 20, 100, 2,000 cases because you've conducted over 6,000 examinations and comparisons. So I want to know roughly from the time you did an opinion for Lieutenant Colonel Mangena to date. Let's forget about the period when you are promoted, you are now seeing members. when you were doing examinations? How many cases?
It will be more than 100, my lord, because we work overtime on a monthly basis. So for 34 hours a month, I actively do cases, at least for overtime, and then some during the day. It will depend on the circumstances of the day.
Uma sesingakhuluma ke noma uthi ke ayisho ukuthi ke kusuka ngaleso sikhathi ke kuzofika manje ke ngasho ke ukuthi ke amacala ke adlulile ke kuyena ke u100 ngoba ke kuba nenkathi ke la asithi mhlambe ke ngenyanga ke sebenze ke amahora awu34 futhi ke sisebenza ke overtime kuloko.
And do you know the details of those 100 or so cases that you've conducted and examined?
No, my lord, there's too many to recall.
Amacala amaningi ke la ukuthi ke ngawakhumbula ukuthi iwaphi noma iwaphi la macala ensebenze kuwona.
Now, how come that you recall the details of this opinion for which you've told this court that there's no note, there's no way you recorded your workings and your examination of these test, the exhibit bullet and the test bullets?
As I explained, my lord, I asked Colonel Mangena after my microscopic examination what case this is. He informed me that it is a Senzo Mahiwa case. I know that I made it positive. I made the exhibit bullet positive to the test in this specific case. The lab numbers and the dates, that is completely different. But I know for a fact that I made it positive.
Uma usho ke uthi ke amanye amacala lana ke imininingwane yakhona ke awunayo kwenzeka kanjani ke ukuthi ke wazi ke mayelana naleli ke icala bese ngishilo ke ngaphambilini ukuthi ngambuza ke uma sengiqedile yena uLieutenant Colonel Mangena ukuthi yiliphi lecala leli wase ngitshela ukuthi ilona ke icala leli engasengemeyiwa yila engazi khona ke ukuthi ke ngiyazi ke ukuthi lapho ke engathola ke ngathola ke ukuthi ke inhlamvu lezi ezimbili ezadudulwa ke ngesibhamu esisodwa ukuthi ke ama lab number kanye nama kona-ke kuhlukile lokho kodwa ngangazi nje ukuthi imiphumela yona yayithini.
When Colonel Mangena came to me for an opinion, he had already done his own microscopic comparison.
Ngenkathi ke uLieutenant Colonel Mangena eza kumina ke wayeseqedile yena ke ukuqhathanisa ke lokho ekwenza ngayo ke i-microscope.
I did my own independent microscopic work to which I informed him of my findings.
Ngase mina ngizenzela ke owami ke umsebenzi ke ngase ngimtshela ke ngaloko engakuthola.
He recorded his findings and we agreed with his findings.
Yena ke lokho akuthola wayekubhale phansi ke sase siyavumelana ke ngaloko yena ke akuthola.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to limit your answer to my questions. The issues that I want to converse with you, I'll come to those issues. Right?
Yeah.
Now, based on the fact that your opinion is not recorded anywhere, not even a worksheet to say, I, Ritha Probla Feliun, date 22 July 2020, comparison TB3, TB10, or whatever comparison you did, and then result in the inclusion, elimination, or inconclusive. We don't have a piece of document like that, correct?
I don't have a piece of document like that.
Yebo kuyiqiniso ukuthi akukho la engibhale khona phansi ke imininingwane mayelana ke nedate ukuthi ngenzani ninike futhi.
So all we have today here in court right now is your say so that you made certain comparisons and you came to a conclusion of a match or an inclusion. That's your say so. That's your ipsa dixit.
That's correct, my lord. I did it under oath.
Esinako thina ke iloko kushiwo kuwena ke ukuthi ngenza lokho ngase ngithola lokho. Yebo kuyiqiniso futhi ngikwenze lokho ke futhi ngikufungele.
Now let me give you a background of my cross-examination to you. Colonel Mangena testified in this matter regarding the exhibit firearm, the exhibit bullet that he tested and compared with the test fires. The beginning of the story is that in February of 2015, a warrant officer, Rulofse, received these exhibits and he fired 2 test fires, which is TB1 and TB2. Can I continue, Mr. Jones? Okay. Then, upon Colonel Mangena's receipt of the test bullets, he first received the test bullets, TB1 and TB2. And then he later received the firearm, and upon receipt of the firearm, he fired several test fires, which are now 8 of them, TB3 to TB10. So the total tests fired were 10, inclusive of the 2 of warrant officer Wilson. Having compared, firstly, TB1 and TB2 with the exhibit bullet, he found that there were some individual marks, but not enough to make an inclusion or a finding, whether it's elimination, conclusion, inconclusive, or the like. Then he had to go and fetch the firearm at Cleveland Police Station so that he can fire the bullets that match the material that was used in the exhibit bullet that was found at the scene, which is a C&J. And to track back a bit, the tests TB1 and TB2 that were fired by Rule of Sec were FMJs, which are the full metal jackets. Mangena goes, gets the firearm, fires 2 FMJs and 6 CMJs. The complete metal jacket, 6 of those. So in total, 4 FMJs are fired. Mangena says his FMJs that he fired are PNP. The 6 CMJs, 2 are Sixowa. 2, he forgot the make. Even at the time he testified, he didn't give the make of the manufacturer of those 2. And then the other one is ANG. The 2 are ANG. Then, having compared all the test fires, 10 of them, he saw the best profile of marks on TB5 and TB9 that he compared with the exhibit bullet and came to a finding of an inclusion. After that, that's when you and your colleagues come into picture on the 22nd of July. He testifies further, Colonel Mangena, to say, I then approached Captain Felyun, now Krobler, Captain or Warrant Officer Fesser, Lieutenant Colonel Serrel, I'm not sure about the ranks of the others, to furnish me with their opinions, which they did, and they agreed with me. On the 23rd of July 2020, he then approaches Lieutenant Colonel Serreo. So sorry, the third colleague was Warrant Officer Ntili. Serreo does the verification on the 23rd of July 2020. And he also examines TB3 to TB10, or all 10 of them. He was dilly-dallying as to whether he did on all 8 or on all 10 test fires, compares them, and then he finds the best marks, profile of marks on TB8, and the lesser better marks on TB4, which he both then makes a finding of an inclusion or a match. You can interpret now, Mr. Jonas, because I want to move.
I don't remember the question you asked.
As far as I know, he's giving me a scenario.
It's a background, my lord. There's no question there.
I see.
Yes. I can proceed. Now you come to court you've done an opinion on the 22nd of July. First question, at the time Colonel Mangena gives you TB3 to TB10, did you know that he had already made a finding of an inclusion or a match?
Am I aware that he'd already made a finding?
At the time he approached you on the 22nd of July 2020, when he gave you the case file and the exhibits to compare, did you know then that he had made a positive finding?
I knew he had made a finding. As to what the finding was, I wasn't aware of. After my confirmation, I said, this is my opinion, which then he informed me, and it was documented that it is the same.
Ingabe ngazo i-22 July 2020 ngathi-ke sorry uKenel Mangena ekunikeza yona the file wawazi ukuthi yina-ke utholenike cha ngangingazi engingangikwazi ukuthi nje wenzileke umsebenzi khona akutholile ukuthi noma kuyakutholile kuyini ngangingakwazi uma sengiqedileke sengimtshela ukuthi mina nake ngikutholile yila asengitshela khona ukuthi yebo ke nami ngithole lokhu futhi wangitshengisa ngoba kwakubhalwe phansi yena lokho awayekutholile.
And you have testified in evidence in chief about the manner in which you did the comparison. You said you took the exhibit bullet and took one of the test fires side by side, compared them and made a finding, correct?
My lord, I said I first compared the tests to each other.
Yes, you compared the tests among themselves to familiarize yourself with the profile of markings. From there you remove the tests and then now you start the comparison.
I then compared the first bullet and then a second bullet.
Engikushilo qala ukuthi ke sorry ngiqale lana ke ngokuthi ke ama test ngiqhathaniswe wona kwase ke emuva kwalokho ngasusa ke manje ke enye ke inhlamvu ila engithatha khona ke inhlamvu yokuqala.
Now let us remove the vagueness. Those test bullets are marked TB3 to TB10. Which of those did the one that you say is the first, did you see the best mark on to compare with the exhibit bullet?
I can't recall the specific test, my lord, as I did not make a note.
Manje ke awusitshele ukuthi yipi ke lena ke owayithatha ke ngoba ke ayemakhiwe ke abo TB3 kuyofika ke na ke TB10 yipi ke owayithatha ke waqhathanisa nayo wabona ke ukuthi yipi othola ke kuyona ke ekuyona ke ama test angisakhumbuli ke ngoba ke angaze noma ke angizange ngibhale phansi.
Let's do this. I've given you the background scenario. Colonel Mangena compared TB5 and TB9 to the exhibit bullet. Did you compare TB5 and TB9? Did you compare TB5 and TB9?
When comparing all the tests to each other, I compared TB3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to each other. And they were fired from the same firearm. I familiarized myself, they had the same markings. So whether I specifically compared it to the specific exhibit, I cannot recall. But I did compare them to each other.
Lana ke uKenel Mangena ushilo ke ukuthi yena ke umeqhathanisa ke wathatha ke uTB5 kanye no TB9 ingabe nawe wakwenza yini lokho ke mina ke mangwathatha ke thatha kusuka ke na ke uTB3 u4 5 6 7 8 9 no 10 ke ngaqhathanisa ke enye kanye nenye.
Now let me add another spice to this point. Colonel Mangena says the barrel of the firearm that shot these tests was worn out. And as a result, the impartation of marks onto the bullets were not consistent. Thereby, he saw the best profile of marks on TB5 and 9. Sereo sees the best profile of marks on TB8, and he says to a lesser extent on TB4. And the FMJs in particular because of the hard metal component and content of that bullet, was difficult to, not difficult per se, but it did not transfer sufficient mass. So all I want to get from you is this. You indiscriminately test and compare TB3 to TB10, and correct me if I'm wrong. You are saying all of those TB3 to TB10 had sufficient marks on them for you to compare and make a positive finding. Is that what you say?
My lord, when I compare the tests to each other, even though the marks are lighter, they are still individual marks. Whether it be FMJ or CMJ, there are still sufficient marks to be able to say that even these marks are lighter, it is still the same firearm. Therefore, after my comparison between the tests, I took the best test and I compared it to the exam. Whether the marks are lighter or darker or more prominent, it doesn't matter. The point is, I could say that even the FMJs and CMJs were still fired from the same firearm. Whether the individual characteristics were more prominent or not, there was sufficient agreement of individual characteristics.
Ukuthi ke isimo ke salama marks sasinjani ke amanye egqamileke kunamanye noma ke engabukeki noma engabonakali kahle ke, kodwa ke lokho kumena ke kwafaneleke ukuthi ngiboneke ukuthi cha kukhona ke okukhona la noma ke engingasebenza ngakho lana ke ila esengithathe khona ke manje le engathi ke kwakuyila ungathi ke iwona ke angcono noma ke the best ukuthi manje ngiqhubekeke ngenze noma ngiqhathanise ngokusebenzisa wona.
I get you. Now, I want to throw another thing as well. You compare TB3 to 10 with the exhibit bullet. Which method did you employ amongst the methods of determining the striations and the impressions on the bullet?
Pattern matching, my lord.
Mina ke indlela ke engayisebenzisa ke ukuthi ke ngiqhathanise ke noma lokubizwa ukuthi ke ama pattern noma ke indlela ke.
Okay, you've briefly touched on how you compared the test with pattern matching. Exactly, what are we looking at compared to? There's a method also that Colonel Mangena and Colonel Serrell testified about, which is the CMS or consecutive matching striae method. The two of them, you say you only, or did you only do the pattern matching?
My lord, you can do pattern matching and inadvertently do CMS. CMS is simply a quantitative method to describe a pattern match.
Lana ke ungakwenza noma ungayisebenzisa ke lena ke ebizwa ngokuthi ke iyona ke pattern matching noma ke indlela ke kanye futhi ke nale ebizwa ngokuthi ke iCMS yona ke ekuyindlela ke eyobheka ke yona ke ibheka yona ke ipattern matching le iCMS.
But in your comparison and in your observation, did you then within the group count the striae, or you just looked at the pattern and you did what's called a follow-up, and then look at the pattern, follow up until you reach group number 6, and then you come to a finding that this gives me a pattern that is similar to the exhibit bullet?
I use pattern matching, my lord.
Okay.
Mina indlela engayisebenzisa ke ukuqhathanisa noma ukubheka ke ukuqhathanisa ke noma ke lebizwa ukuthi ke ipattern matching.
And just to concretize this point, with pattern matching, we don't do the land counting, correct? We don't count the striae as to how many times they recur and all of that, correct?
No, my lord, I look at the specific pattern, the width, the depth of the furrows, the marks, the specific pattern.
Mina ngikubhekayo ke lapho indlela nje ethize ke yokwenza noma ke ekwenzeka ngayo lokubizwa ukuthi ke ama striae kanye futhi ke nama grooves kanye futhi nokuthi ke ujule kangakanani futhi uvuleke kangakanani.
And just on that, if I say for people that are ballistically not educated, if I say you do a follow-on as you look group, the next group. Explain briefly what a follow-on is.
A follow-up, my lord, would be a second set of matching patterns to indicate that, so on your first group you'll have a pattern. You will follow to the next group. There will be an agreement of individual, which will be an agreement of the pattern. You will continue, you match the patterns to each other.
Uma ukhuluma ke ngefollow on ila khona ke uma usutholileke koyoqala ke ipattern usundlulela kwenye ke ubheke ukuthi uzothola lokhu okutholileke kule ngaphambilini bese futhi uyandlulela nakwelandelayo.
And when you look at the test bullets under the microscope, TB3 to TB10, and you look at the exhibit bullet under the microscope, did you observe what you referred to in evidence in chief as slippage or skid marks on those exhibit bullet and test fires?
My lord, I simply explained as to how one of the means that you can distinguish between whether a 9mm was or a 38 was fired from a revolver. It was just an explanation.
Ngaphambilini ke bengichaza ke nje umahluko ke la ungathola khona ke uma bese ngikhuluma ke ngalama marks ngikhulume ke ubona ngama slip marks ama skid marks ukuthi ikona ke ukuchazelayo ukuthi bekusetshenziswa i38 noma bekusetshenziswa yona i9mm bengichaza lokho kuphela.
Yes, but now I'm asking you, within this context, did you see skid marks on the exhibit bullet and the test fires?
I can't recall, my lord. I simply looked at patterns. I can't recall whether it was a skid mark or a specific mark. There was agreement.
Engakubona ke ukuthi ke mina nje kokhona ke ukuvumelana okwakukhona ke ukuthi kwakunalama mark ke esiwabiza ngokuthi ke ama skid marks ke angisakhumbula ukuthi kwakukhona yini noma ngakuthola ngakubona yini lokho.
Now, if you look under a microscope as an examiner and you find that the class characteristics are there, they are discernible, and there are some individual marks, but they are not sufficient for an identification, what conclusion may you as an examiner come to?
If there is not enough agreement of individual characteristics, my lord, I would prefer to make it inconclusive, as I cannot specifically say or include it.
Uma ukuthi ke ngiyathola ke ukuthi ke akwaneleke noma ke akukho kuvumelana okukhona ke ila engizothi khona ke uma sengificelela ke emaphethelweni ke ukuthi ke akwanele ngoba ke akukho engakusho ngesiqiniseko.
But I would record in my notes whether it is positively inclined or negatively inclined, for example.
Kodwa ke lokho into engizoyibhala ke kona ke ama notes ukuthi uma ihlanganiswa ke ngoko positive noma ke negative.
I was just about to come to that because I asked guiding document within the ballistic comparison and examination and the range of conclusions that you can arrive at are two documents. The first is the AFTE, the AFTE theory of identification, and the second document is the AFTE theory of results that you can, of conclusions that you can arrive at. I just want to briefly touch with you on the third principle of AFTE, which says an examiner comes to a finding, whether it's an elimination, inclusion, or any other finding, in a subjective way, based on scientific principles and the examiner's training, experience, and knowledge. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware, my lord.
Umelulana ke uchaza ke ukuthi ke kunencwadi noma ke documenti abayibiza ngokuthi i-AFT ke la ukuthi ke yini ke elindelekile noma ke ekufanele ke lowo owumcwaningi ayenze noma ke uma eseficelela ke noma efinyelela ke emaphethelweni aloko akutholayo uthi i-AFT ne kodwa ke incwadi noma document amabini i-AFT ne-AFT.
And those combinations, the scientific principles, your eye, your mind, judgment, plus your experience. It helps you to arrive at a finding that there is sufficient agreement between the striations on the compared specimen, correct?
Correct, malo.
Uyachaza-ke nokuthi ke iyatshela ukuthi yini ke ekulekelelayo ke ukuthi ihlo lakho umcabango wakho kanye futhi ke kanye nesilo noma ke ulwazi lwakho ke ukuthi yizona ke ezikulekelelayo ke ukuthi ufinyeleleke kuloko okutholile.
And in terms of principle number 2 of the theory of identification, in other words, I'm just going to sum it up. I'm not going to quote it verbatim because I don't have my material in front of me. It says, whether there's a level of sufficient agreement, you as an examiner, you must have observed marks that exceed the best agreement demonstrated between two marks known to have been produced by different tools and is consistent with agreement demonstrated by two marks known to have been produced by the same tool. And in essence, this leads us to what are commonly known as the known match and the known non-match. Would I be correct in that instance?
That's correct, Malo.
Are you reading from somewhere?
He's reading, he's summarizing.
It's principle 2. It's a long paragraph of the FT theory of identification.
I interpret something I don't know. Just go. No, I've got it, but it's fine. Go.
Is it fine?
I will just look for something I don't know. Just go.
Now, with regard to that, man, I just want to come to the subjectivity that comes to play, especially at the interpretation of your findings. Everything thus far has been under the microscope, but now saying that I am looking at the exhibit bullet compared to any of the test fires, and with my mind and my eye in the mind, I must look first at the marks that were produced by a tool known to have produced that, compared to marks that were produced by tools known to have been produced by that tool, and say, with that in mind, with that background of mind and my experience, this is either an elimination, inclusion, or inconclusive. Correct?
That's correct, man.
Ngokuqhathanisa ke ubheka ke ngithi ke lokhu engikubonayo ke kubuya kuphi ke nalokho kubuya kuphi ke masikhuluma ngaso ke isibhamu ukuthi ke mase ngifica ke egcineni ukuthi ke ingqondo yami ke kanye nalo iselami yilokho engikubonayo ngithola khona lokho kuyiqiniso.
And Captain Serrano testified, I took something profoundly from him to say, we are in fact, as examiners, when you say we, I'm including myself under your category, you are saying it is a match, not because the marks are the same, but the marks are closer to similar. He used a term, I'm trying to look on my notes. He says it is microscopically identical. When you look at the marks under the microscope, they are almost identical.
That's correct, Melo, if that is what he said.
Uma kuyilokho ke akushilo ngoba ke umeli uthi ke okushiwo uyena ke usirewo ukuthi ke uma ke sibheka ke lokho hayi ukuthi ke ama marks ke afane ncamashi kodwa ke uma sibheka kuyona ke I microscope sizothi ke kuyahlangana ke noma ke imatch ngoba ke cishe kufane uma esho kanjalo ke yebo.
Now there's also the length impressions. Can you briefly say what are the length impressions?
The lines are between the grooves, my lord. They are the flatter surfaces without the striations.
Uma sithetha ngama-land lana ke sithetha ke la kuyona ke ama-grooves kodwa hayi la khona ke ekunale yamigqa khona ke la ekuflat khona.
Now you were asked by my learned colleague Advocate Sibanda to give a description or a definition of class characteristics and individual characteristics, but I will add and say that's not the full story. because there are what are called subclass characteristics, correct?
There is subclass characteristics, my lord. There is such a thing. That's correct.
Kuyiqiniso yabo ikhona ke into ebizwa ngokuthi ke ama subclass.
And what are those subclass characteristics?
My lord, subclass characteristics occur during the manufacturing process. They are limited to a specific batch of barrels produced.
Lokho ke kwenzeka ngesikhathi ke sokwenziwa ke noma ke esokuveliswa ke futhi ke kuya ke noma ke ngama batch ke ahlukene ke awo ama barrels.
Which means that some firearms don't necessarily have subclass characteristics.
Okusho ukuthi ke ibhame ethize ke azibi nakho ke kona lokho okubizwa ngokuthi ke ama subclass.
Now, in order to concretely say the class characteristics, we know those for a bullet, right? We know the caliber, we know the rifling, we know all of those things. With class characteristics, as you compare to individual characteristics, in order for you as an examiner to say, I have looked at individual, I've looked at class, then with that in mind, I've eliminated subclass which may mimic individual characteristics to an unintelligible examiner. And having eliminated subclass characteristics, I can then say, truly what is left here are the individual marks that correspond with the individual marks on the exhibit bullet, right?
That's correct, my lord.
Yebo lana ke uma usukhuluma ke ngalamana ke lona ayihambela ngawodwa noma ke lana ekuthiwa ama individual nawo ke uphinde uwabheke ke ubheka nawo la ekuthiwa ama ahlangeneke noma ke ama subclass.
Can you personally distinguish between subclass characteristics and individual characteristics?
My lord, that is what we are trained for. Subclass characteristics are not necessarily transferred to each and every groove on a specific barrel. It is also an accidental mark which occurs during the manufacturing process. So it could be limited to one groove only. Therefore, I don't identify only on one specific groove. I ensure that there is a follow-up and other markings on other grooves and on other portions of the bullet, for me to be able to distinguish between individual and subclass characteristics.
Ikona ke esikuqeqeshelwayo ke lokho ukuthi sihlukaniseke ingakho ke uma ngitholile ke ugroove eyodwa ke angigcini lapho ke ingakho ke sengidlulela kwelandelayo ke ngidlulele ke futhi kwenye ke ukubheka ke ukuthi ke lokho engikutholile ngizophinde ngikuthole yini uma ngidlulela kuwona onke.
But in order for you to eliminate subclass characteristics, you need to know the batch that was produced that have got those subclass characteristics, correct?
I don't understand the question. What do you mean by batch?
You said subclass characteristics are limited to a shape along batches, didn't understand you, of certain firearms during manufacture.
That's correct, my lord.
Now I'm saying to you, in order for you as an examiner sitting with a ocular microscope comparing the exhibit and the test fire, you must then remove or take from your mind the subclass characteristics so that what you are left with are truly individual characteristics and class characteristics for you to arrive at any finding.
That's correct, my lord.
Lana ke ukuthi ke ngizoficelela ke esigcinweni noma amaphethelweni ukuthi ngitholani ke ila engizofanele ngisuse khona ke lokho kubizwa ukuthi ke ama subclass futhi ngibheke wona ke lana ke ayihambelayo ngawodwa ke ama individual ikona ke ekuzongiholela ekuthini ke ngifike noma ke ngifike emaphethelweni.
Amen. And if you cannot answer this, you may say you can't answer it. You are approached on the 22nd of July 2020 by Colonel Mangena for an opinion, right?
That's correct, my lord.
What was your rank at the time?
I was a captain, my lord.
Nge-22 sika July 2020 uma eza kumina ke uKolonel Mangena ezongicela ke uvo ngangiu-captain.
Therefore, you were suitably qualified for him also to have requested you to do a verification, correct?
My lord, my rank has nothing to do whether I'm suitable or qualified to give an opinion as to a microscopic finding.
Ukuthi ke isikhundla sami ke CP ke akunalutho noma akuhlangene lutho ke nokuthi ke nganikeza ngovo noma nganikezi ke ngalo uvo.
Because the criteria simply is that as long as you are a qualified examiner with experience, you can either proffer an opinion to a colleague or be asked to verify the findings of a colleague, correct?
As long as I am trained and sufficient and competent on the specific level, irrespective of rank, you can give an opinion or a verification, my lord.
Okufunekayo nje ukuthi ke uba nje ngitholile ngiqeqeshiwe ke futhi ke kwashiwa ukuthi ngikulungeleke ukwenza lokho ukuthi ke iranki ke yipi lokho ke akuhlangene nje lutho.
And similarly, I'm perturbed by this perception of the experts or so-called experts when they come to court and they are asked, what is your high-profile case? Does Ballistics look at high-profile cases or they look at bullets from and components of ammunition, firearms from the scene, irrespective of the nature of the personality involved in the offense?
We look at the exhibits, my lord, irrespective of whether it is publicized or not.
Thina ke sikubhekayo noma sibuka ke amazibithi ukuthi ke icala leli ke liyasakazwa ke noma cha asibheki ke lokho.
So in your vocabulary there's no, because I learned this from a fingerprint expert. I put a question to him, I said high profile, he says no, we're looking at the case, we're not looking at high profile.
That's
similarly,
correct.
the same should apply to you.
That's correct, my lord, the same applies.
Kuyiqiniso nakuthina ke ukuthi ke sibheka ke amazibithi asibheki ukuthi ke icala elinjani.
Now, have you ever been requested to verify a finding of an elimination?
I have, my lord.
Usuke wacelwa yini ke ukuthi ke ubheke ke la khona ke kuthiwe cha lokho asikuhlanganisi nalokho siyakhipha yebo kusuke kwenzeka ke lokho.
Have you ever been asked to verify a finding of inconclusive?
I have, my lord.
Ukuthi nokuthi futhi ke ubheke ukuthi lana ke yebo kukhona ke kodwa ke akwaneleke yebo naloko seke ngakwenza.
With regard to the inconclusive finding for peer review, did you confirm or make it an inclusion or elimination?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You've been asked before to verify an inconclusive finding, right?
That's correct, my lord.
And when you verified, you did your independent microscopic examination. Did you then go to the primary examiner and say, no, for me, it's not an inconclusive case, it is a positive case, or for me, it is not an inconclusive, it's an elimination?
I have, my lord.
Manje ke kulokhu ke la uthi khona ke uceliwe ukuthi ubheke ke kuthiwa la cha khona ke la esikutholayo ke yebo khona ukutholakala kodwa ke akwaneleke noma ke akupheleleke ukuthi wena ke uma usubheka manje uthi cha ubuyele kulomuntu ocelile uthi la lokho engikutholayo ke lana cha lokho ke akusuka ukuthi nje akuphelele kuyakhishwa noma ke akuhlangani yebo ngiseke ngakwenza lokho.
Now in this instance, do you know Mr. Dave Peterson, who used to be attached to the Forensic Sciences Laboratory Ballistics section as well?
I know Mr. Peterson, my lord.
Ingabe uyamazi yini uDave Peterson naye ke usuke wasebenza ke la nisebenza khona yebo ngiyamazi.
Now we as the defense have retained him and he has examined TB1 to TB10, compared it with the exhibit bullet in the presence of the investigating officer of this case, Brigadier Gelinda and Lieutenant Colonel Mangena. And his findings are that this is an inconclusive case because he could find discernible class characteristics, he could find some individual characteristics, but they are not sufficient enough to make an inclusion. Therefore, he made it a case of an inconclusive finding. So I'm not going to speak about borderline. I don't speak about borderline. I'm speaking ballistics now. This is an inconclusive finding according to Dave Peterson.
I thought you would respond.
I'm not sure what the question.
Do you want to comment on that?
Mr. Peters is entitled. I Because we do cases on a daily basis. Mr. Peterson has left the laboratory to my extent on 2015. I don't know how many cases he's been doing.
Lana ke mangikubuza ngaye ke Mr. Dave Peterson uthi naye ke usebenzile ke lana ke noma ke naye ke waqhathanisa ngaye uTB1 yofika ke kuTB10 futhi ke eqhathanisa nalo ke inhlamvu lena ke ezibithi wathola yena ke ukuthi ke cha lokhu ke akwaneleke noma ke lokhu akutholile ke na ke akwanele uthi ke ma ephendula ke thina ke sisebenza ngamacala ke ngathi ke ilanga nelanga uMr Peters uhambe elab ngo2015 angazi ukuthi mangaka amacala asebenza ngawo.
His opinion would be based on his own experience and training, my lord.
Uvo lwakhe ke lumayelana ke nesipiloni anaso ke futhi ke ne training ayithola.
Mr. Peterson also has done over 6,000 cases, but on what he does on a daily basis, he'll come and tell this court. But when it comes to borderline, let me address this issue of borderline. In our consultation with him, he says the reason why Colonel Mangena approaches, and I'm sorry to not name you by ranks, it means no disrespect to all of you. The reason why I approached Felyun, I mean, that's what he says, Mr. Dave Peters. The reason why Colonel Mangena approaches these individuals, Ntini, Fesser, and Felyun, is because he was having difficulty. This was a borderline case of identification, which could have been made inconclusive. And I told Colonel Mangena during our testing in his Mistrend laboratory that this is a borderline inconclusive case, therefore it should have been made inconclusive. That's why the word borderline comes in.
My lord, I would suspect that that statement is based on Mr. Peter's assumption and opinion.
Sorry. Okay.
No.
Lana ke angitshele ke ukuthi ke okushiwo uyena ke uPeterson ukuthi ke ungani ke uKennel Mangena waya ke kulabantu ke ababiziwe ke ukuthi ke uFelyun abontini kanye futhi ke nalabo abanye ke ingoba ke wayibona ukuthi la kulecala kwakufanele ke nje afinyelele ukuthi ke cha lana akwaneleke ingakho ayakubona ke uma iphendula ke uthi ke lokho ke umcabango wakhe ke yena ke uDave Peterson.
My lord, I'm almost done. May I be given just a moment to go through my notes to see if I have left anything.
Sorry, just for my understanding. How long did you work with Mr. Peterson?
From 2000, my lord, until 2015.
Sebenze naye ke Mr Peterson ukusuka ngo2000 asole ngo2000 kwayofika ke naye u2015.
And then you say he left.
He left the laboratory.
Employ of the South African Ballistics.
That is correct, my lord.
Waseyahamba ke ngayo u2015.
To do what? Do you know? If you don't know.
As far as I understand, he's a private expert.
Private?
He started his own company.
Okay.
Ngokwazi kwami ke waqala inkampani yakhe ke ungoti oyimele.
And what exactly it is, I cannot recall.
Ukuthi kuyini ke angikhumbuli.
My lord, that's all I have for the witness. Thank you, Amanda.
Why do you quantify the type of work he does? You say you guys work daily with these ballistics.
That is correct, my lord.
Daily.
Daily, that is our core function, my lord, is examination of firearms and tool marks
For the whole of South Africa.
for all the examiners in South Africa.
Umsebenzi wethu esiwenza ke langa nelanga ke futhi ke sisebenzela ke eSouth Africa yonkana.
Whether you receive a firearm or exhibits on a basis, whether you receive tool marks will be determined by the operational commander.
Ukuthi ke uthola ke ibhamu ke uthola ke ama tool marks lokho ke uzo uyena ke icommander ozokusho ke lokho.
Yeah, man, before just I finish that, like I said to you, what Mr. Peterson does on a daily basis, he'll come to this court because it will be wrong for me to put a proposition that he also works daily with firearms when he hasn't given me that instruction. So he'll speak for himself. Thank you.
Uzoyisholo yena ke ukuthi wenzani ke noma ke umhluke umsebenzi awenzayo angeke ngimkhulumele mina ke uPeterson.
Sorry, and what was his rank when he left?
Lieutenant Colonel, my lord.
waye uLieutenant Colonel naye-ke uma esebeka phansi-ke khona lapha elab yena uDavid.
Yes. Further cross-examination, Mr. Nisi.
I realize that we only 10 minutes towards the lunch adjournment. So, President, I start with the cross-examination.
What time should we start?
At 2 months. Normally, starting time of the lunch is at 2 o'clock.
Is that okay, Mr.?
It's in order, my lord.
You're available at 10 to 2.
I'm available, my lord.
Okay. So come back at 10 to 2.